The Tarshan Collective had been congratulating itself for approximately 8 centuries on having achieved what it called post-physical civilization. This was a fancy way of saying they had evolved past the need for anything so crude as muscle mass, robust skeletal structures, or immune systems that could handle more than 3 types of bacteria. They had technology. They had medicine. They had automated systems that could do literally everything except survive a stiff breeze without medical intervention. To be fair, they had earned their arrogance. The collective had mastered faster than light travel, while humans were still figuring out that washing hands prevented disease. They had solved energy scarcity, extended lifespans to 400 years, and created art so beautiful it could make you weep. They had also, somewhat unfortunately, bred themselves into beings with the structural integrity of wet cardboard. The collective consisted of 7 primary species, each more delicate than the last. The Quilarians were tall, elegant, with translucent skin and bones that could fracture if you looked at them wrong. The Helixians were shorter, stockier, but possessed internal organs so sensitive that loud noises could literally make them vomit. The Crystallids were living gemstones, beautiful and absolutely useless in any scenario involving physical labor. And then there were the Deathworlders. The collective had encountered 42 species, from what they clinically termed hyper-hostile evolutionary environments. Worlds where survival required things like venom resistance, redundant organs, or the ability to heal from injuries that would kill a Quilarian 3 times over. These species were useful, very useful. Someone had to do the heavy lifting, after all, and it certainly was not going to be anyone whose ribcage could be shattered by a firm hug. Humans occupied a special place in this hierarchy. Not the strongest Deathworlders, not the fastest, not the most venomous. Just persistently, annoyingly difficult to kill. Earth had spent millions of years trying every possible method. Predators, plagues, weather that ranged from surface of the sun to frozen hellscape. And humans had responded by domesticating the predators, weaponizing the plagues, and building cities in both temperature extremes just to prove a point. The collective found this simultaneously impressive and deeply unsettling. Orbital Station Zenith 9 floated in the Kalmar system like a massive steel flower, its 17 petals extending outward from a central hub. Each petal housed different facilities: research laboratories, trading centers, residential quarters, manufacturing zones. The station was home to approximately 40,000 beings from 30 different species and represented the pinnacle of collective engineering. It also represented the pinnacle of collective social hierarchy, which was considerably less impressive. Soft species occupied the upper levels. Literally and figuratively, they had the best quarters, the most prestigious positions, the highest pay. Deathworlders worked the lower levels, handling cargo, maintaining machinery, doing anything that required physical interaction with the material world. This arrangement was never officially codified, but it did not need to be. Everyone understood how things worked. The station had security systems designed specifically to protect its fragile inhabitants. Automated medical bays on every level. Impact-absorbing floors. Climate control so precise it could adjust temperature by fractions of a degree. And protocols, endless protocols, about how Deathworlders were expected to behave. Move slowly. Speak softly. Never make sudden movements. Always yield right of way. Essentially, make yourself as small and non-threatening as possible so the delicate flowers around you did not panic. Most Deathworlders complied. The pay was excellent, the work was not difficult, and honestly, accidentally, killing your coworkers was bad for everyone involved. Raven Kowalski had been complying for 11 months. Raven stood 5'10", with black hair she kept in a practical braid, dark eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of lean, efficient build that came from a childhood spent in Earth's one gravity, doing things like existing and not dying. She worked as a cargo specialist in the lower manufacturing district, which meant she spent her days moving equipment that weighed anywhere from 50 to 500 kilograms, operating heavy machinery, and occasionally being called in when something needed to be physically forced into compliance. She was good at her job. Better than good. She could eyeball weight distribution, calculate load-bearing capacity in her head, and had never once had a workplace accident. Her efficiency ratings were in the top 5th percentile. Her safety record was spotless. She was also, according to her Quilarian supervisor, surprisingly intelligent for a Deathworlder. This was meant as a compliment. Raven had learned to take it as such. She had come to Zenith 9 with clear goals: work for 2 years, save 80% of her salary, return to Earth with enough capital to start her own freight company. Simple, straightforward. She just needed to keep her head down, do her job, and tolerate the casual condescension that came with being the station's resident gravity worlder. For 11 months, this plan had worked perfectly. Then she met Velshur. Velshur Quintelos was Quilarian aristocracy, which meant he had been born into wealth so vast his family owned 3 moons and considered it a modest investment portfolio. He was approximately 90 standard years old, which translated to young adult for his species, and he had the kind of face that looked like it had been specifically designed to appear in propaganda posters about genetic superiority. He was also, without question, the most insufferable being Raven had ever encountered. Velshur worked in the station's xenobiology research division, which gave him access to various facilities and, more problematically, put him in regular contact with Deathworlder staff. He found them fascinating the way a particularly cruel child finds ants fascinating, something to study, to test, to see what happened when you pulled their legs off. Metaphorically speaking, mostly, Raven first encountered him in week 3 of her posting. She had been moving a shipment of laboratory equipment, minding her own business, when Velshur had stopped her to ask invasive questions about human biology. Could she really survive on less than 6 hours of sleep? Was it true humans could eat rotten food without dying? Did she actually have an organ whose sole purpose was storing dangerous bacteria? Raven had answered politely, professionally. She needed this job. Velshur had smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes and thanked her for indulging his curiosity about primitive species. That should have been the end of it. It was not the end of it. Over the following months, Velshur made Raven his personal research project. He would appear at random times with questions, observations, little tests. Could she lift this? How fast could she move? What was her reaction time to unexpected stimuli? He started small, moving her equipment without telling her, changing her schedules, sending her to wrong locations for pickups. Inconveniences, nothing more. Raven tolerated it, filed a complaint with her supervisor, was told Velshur was an important researcher and she should be flattered by his scientific interest. Velshur escalated. He began conducting what he called behavioral studies. He would create situations to observe her responses. A sudden loud noise to test her startle reflex, unexpected obstacles to measure her problem solving. Once, he had locked her in a storage bay for 3 hours to observe stress responses in isolation conditions. Raven filed another complaint, was told she was being oversensitive. Deathworlders were supposed to be resilient. Surely this was not actually bothering her. It was bothering her. But Raven had been raised by a mother who had survived corporate politics at a Fortune 500 company and a father who had done 2 tours as a combat medic. She knew how to endure, how to document, how to build a case. She kept records, timestamps, witness statements, everything properly formatted according to collective labor regulations. She filed her 3rd complaint in month 7. It was dismissed. Her 4th complaint in month 9. Also dismissed. By month 10, Velshur had recruited friends. Zephyrim was another Quilarian, slightly older, equally privileged, crystallid named Hexrath, who found the entire situation amusing. They formed a little group, and Raven became their entertainment. They started sabotaging her equipment in ways that could have been dangerous. A malfunctioning gravlift that nearly dropped 200 kilos of machinery on her. A sealed door in a refrigerated cargo bay that left her in sub-zero temperatures for an hour. A accidentally vented atmosphere in a storage section that had her scrambling for an emergency respirator. Each time, they claimed innocence. Equipment malfunctions, system glitches. These things happened. Raven filed complaints. Every single one. She documented everything. She followed every protocol. Station management reviewed her complaints with all the urgency of a sloth taking a nap and concluded there was insufficient evidence of deliberate harassment. Meanwhile, Velcher was getting bolder. He had started making public comments about his research, about how fascinating it was to test a Deathworlder's limits, about how Raven was such a good subject because she never complained. At social gatherings, he would tell stories about his experiments to applause and laughter from other soft species who found the whole thing delightfully daring. Raven heard about this, secondhand, from other Deathworkers who were getting increasingly worried. A Kralix loader named Thorn pulled her aside in week 42 and said, "You need to do something. He is going to get you killed." "I am doing something," Raven said. "I am following procedure. Procedure is not working. Then I will file more complaints. And when those do not work, Raven did not have an answer. The breaking point came on day 317 of her posting. Raven had been assigned to transport a shipment of biological samples from the research district to cold storage. Standard work. She had done it 100 times. She loaded the containers onto her grav cart, verified the seals, checked the temperature controls, and headed out. Halfway to storage, the cart malfunctioned. Not gradually, catastrophically. The grav field collapsed, dumping 200 kilos of containers onto the deck. 3 containers shattered. Biological samples, some of them hazardous, spilled everywhere. Raven had approximately 15 seconds before station safety protocols detected the contamination and sealed the corridor. She grabbed what she could, hauled it to a safe zone, and got clear just as emergency bulkheads slammed down. The decontamination process took 4 hours. She spent that time in a sealed room, being scanned, being questioned, being treated like she had deliberately caused the accident. The investigation concluded it was equipment failure, Raven's fault for not performing adequate maintenance checks. Raven knew she had checked everything, she always did, but she had no proof beyond her word against system logs that had been conveniently corrupted. She filed another complaint, it went nowhere. 2 days later, she overheard Velcher talking. Raven had been working in a maintenance tunnel, replacing power conduits. The tunnels had excellent acoustics. Voices carried. And Velcher, dining with his friends in an adjacent section, was not being quiet. "Did you see the contamination incident? Absolutely spectacular data. Human stress responses under genuine threat conditions are fascinating. Her cortisol levels must have been extraordinary." "You caused that." Zephyrum's voice, amused. "I may have adjusted a few settings on her equipment. Nothing that would be traced back, of course. But the results were worth it. I am writing a paper, Deathworlder Behavioral Adaptations in Crisis Scenarios. It will be published in the Journal of Xenobiological Studies." "Was that not dangerous?" Hexwrath asked. "For her? Barely. She is a Deathworlder. They survive these things. That is why they are useful. What if she had been seriously injured? Then I would have had even better data. Besides, Station Medical could have handled it. Probably. These creatures are remarkably durable. It would take genuine effort to kill one." Laughter. Actual laughter. Like this was the funniest thing they had ever heard. Raven stopped working, put down her tools, stared at the conduit in her hands. And something inside her, something that had been bending under pressure for 11 months, snapped. Not broke, not shattered, just snapped into a different configuration, a harder configuration. She finished her shift, returned her equipment, went to her quarters, sat on her bunk, and made a choice. She was done being professional, done following protocols that did not protect her, done making herself small for people who saw her as a laboratory animal. If they wanted to see what a Deathworlder could actually do, she would show them. The opportunity came 3 days later. Raven had been in the lower district commissary, eating a late meal after her shift. The commissary was one of the few spaces where different species mixed relatively freely, though even here, there was an unspoken segregation. Soft species clustered near the viewing windows. Deathworlders ate near the back. Velcher entered with his entourage, 6 Quilarians, all dressed in the sort of expensive clothes that screamed, "I have never done manual labor in my life." They scanned the room, spotted Raven, and smiled. This was not going to be good. They approached her table. Velshur sat down uninvited, his friends flanking him like particularly fragile bodyguards. "Raven Kowalski," he said, his voice carrying that particular tone of false friendliness. "I have been hoping to run into you. I wanted to apologize." Raven put down her fork. "Apologize for what, specifically?" "For any distress my research may have caused. I realize now that some of my methods may have been overly aggressive. I should have been more considerate of your emotional limitations." "My emotional limitations, yes. I sometimes forget that Deathworlders, despite their physical resilience, can be quite sensitive psychologically. It is a fascinating contradiction, really. You can survive injuries that would kill most species, but you get upset over simple scientific inquiry." The commissary had gone quiet. Approximately 30 beings were watching now. This was entertainment. The exotic Deathworlder being put in her place by sophisticated collective citizens. Raven smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had just been handed exactly the opportunity she needed. "You tried to kill me," she said conversationally. "Multiple times. The grav lift malfunction. The locked refrigeration bay. The atmospheric vent. The contamination incident. That was all you." Velshur's expression flickered. Just for a moment. Surprised that she knew. Then it smoothed back into condescending amusement. "Those were accidents. Equipment failures. If you are looking for someone to blame, perhaps you should examine your own maintenance procedures. I heard you, 3 days ago, bragging about it to your friends. You sabotaged my equipment for data. For a research paper. You treated me like a lab rat and almost got me killed for academic credentials. That is a very serious accusation," Velshur said slowly. "Do you have proof?" "Station systems record everything. I pulled the audio logs. Your entire conversation. Every word. That was a lie." Raven had tried to pull the logs and found them conveniently restricted, but Velshur did not know that. His translucent skin went slightly paler. Fear, actual fear flickering across his face. "You cannot," he started. "Cannot what? Report you?" "I tried that, 5 times. Filed 5 formal complaints. Station management dismissed all of them. So here is what is going to happen instead." Raven stood up. Slowly, deliberately. Every being in the commissary took an instinctive step backward. "You are going to leave me alone. Completely. You are going to stop your research. You are going to tell everyone who will listen that you fabricated data, that you endangered a colleague, that you are, fundamentally, a coward who hides behind procedure because you know I could snap you in half without trying." "You are threatening me," Velshur said, standing as well. His friends moved to flank him. "In front of witnesses. This is assault. I will have you arrested. Go ahead. Please. Report that the Deathworlder you have been torturing for months finally told you to stop. See how that plays out. You cannot touch me. Station regulations explicitly forbid violence. You will be terminated, arrested, possibly deported." "You are right," Raven said. "I cannot touch you. That would be against regulations. So I am just going to tell you, very clearly, to back off. And you are going to listen. Because deep down, past all your arrogance and your privilege and your superiority complex, you know exactly what I am capable of." She took 1 step forward. Velshur took 2 steps back. "You are scared of me," Raven continued. "You have always been scared. That is why you do these little experiments. Because it makes you feel powerful to control something dangerous. But here is the thing about dangerous animals. We are only safe when we choose to be." "I am not scared of you," Velshur said, but his voice shook. "Yes, you are. You are terrified. Because you just realized that all those protocols, all those regulations, all that technology, none of it actually protects you. I have been holding back. Every Deathworlder you have ever met has been holding back. We move slowly because we do not want to scare you. We follow your rules because we do not want to hurt you. But that was our choice. and choices can change. She turned to leave. Every being in her path scrambled out of the way. And Velshire, in what would later be recognized as possibly the worst decision of his life, grabbed her arm, not hard, not violently. Just reached out and grabbed her wrist, trying to stop her from walking away. Raven looked down at his hand, then up at his face. "Let go," she said quietly. "No. You do not get to threaten me and walk away. You do not get to act like you are in control here. You are a Deathworlder, a laborer, you work for us. You do not give us orders. Last chance. Let go. Or what? You will file another complaint. You will cry to management. You will do nothing, because you cannot do anything, because we own this station, and you are just Raven moved." Humans had evolved on a planet with predators that could accelerate from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. With prey animals that could change direction mid-flight. With an environment that rewarded explosive movement, split-second decisions, and the kind of reflexes that meant the difference between eating and being eaten. Raven had been holding back for 11 months. Moving at Quillarian speed, restraining herself to prevent accidents, making herself slower, weaker, less threatening. She stopped holding back. Her free hand closed around Velshire's wrist. She twisted, leveraged, used basic physics that every human learned in self-defense classes. Velshire yelped, tried to pull away, could not. Raven pulled him forward, off balance, then swept his legs. He went down hard. Not injured, not seriously. But on the floor, staring up at her, absolutely comprehending for the first time what Deathworlder actually meant. His friends rushed forward, Zephyrim and 3 others, all thinking they could restrain her through numbers. They were wrong. Raven moved through them like a force of nature, not punching. Not trying to injure. Just grappling, redirecting, using their momentum against them. Quillarians were tall but light. Their bones were hollow. Their musculature was minimal. They had evolved in low gravity, with no predators. Raven had evolved to run down prey over marathon distances, to fight off attackers, to survive falls that would kill softer species. It took 11 seconds to put all 4 of them on the ground. Not hurt. Not bleeding. Just thoroughly, comprehensively defeated. The commissary was dead silent. 30 beings pressed against walls, eyes wide, finally seeing what humans actually were when they stopped pretending to be harmless. Raven stood over Velshire, breathing normally. Not tired. Not even winded. "I held back," she said quietly. "Every day for 11 months, I held back. I moved slowly, spoke softly, made myself smaller. Do you understand how much effort that takes? How much control? You thought I was weak, because I followed your rules. That was your mistake." "Please," Velshire whispered. His translucent skin had gone completely white. "Please do not hurt me. I am not going to hurt you. I am just going to make sure you understand. You poked the predator. You ran experiments on a being that could kill you by accident. You mistook restraint for inability. That was stupid." She looked around the commissary. Every eye was on her. Anyone else want to test the Deathworlder? Anyone else think this is entertainment? No? Good. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to treat us with basic respect, not fear. Not worship, just respect. You are going to stop treating us like we are your property. And if anyone has a problem with that, you can take it up with me personally. Security arrived 4 minutes later. 8 officers in full armor, carrying neural disruptors, moving with the careful tension of people approaching something genuinely dangerous. The lead officer was Helixian, a veteran named Korthas, who had always been professional with Raven. He stopped 3 meters away, weapon lowered but ready. "Technician Kowalski," he said carefully. "I need you to come with us." "Am I under arrest?" "That depends. Are you going to cooperate?" Raven looked at the officers. Then at the room full of terrified soft species. Then back at Korthas. "Yes," she said. "I will cooperate. I have made my point." They escorted her to detention. Not roughly, but very, very carefully. Maintaining distance. Hands near weapons, moving like people who had suddenly realized they had been working alongside something far more dangerous than they had believed. The investigation took 5 days. Station Command, suddenly very interested in situations they had previously ignored, interviewed everyone, reviewed footage, analyzed data. The findings were complicated. Yes, Raven had engaged in physical altercation with multiple station personnel. Yes, she had violated several regulations regarding workplace conduct. Yes, she had created an incident that required medical intervention and caused significant disruption. However, the investigation also uncovered something embarrassing for station management. Evidence of Velcher's sabotage. Audio logs of his bragging. Records of Raven's 5 ignored complaints. Documentation of systematic harassment that had been deliberately overlooked because addressing it would have been inconvenient. Collective labor law, for all its flaws, did recognize self-defense as valid. It also recognized that employers had obligations to protect employees from harassment. Station management had failed that obligation spectacularly. The resolution came on day 6. Raven was summoned to Station Commander Talvex's office. Talvex was crystallid, ancient by their standards, and possessed the kind of hard-earned wisdom that came from managing disasters for 2 centuries. Technician Kowalski, she said, her crystalline structure refracting light into rainbow patterns. This is unprecedented. Raven said nothing. You assaulted 4 station personnel. That cannot be ignored. However, you also defended yourself against documented harassment that this station failed to address. That also cannot be ignored. So what happens now? Complicated things. Velcher Quintelos has been terminated and faces criminal charges for sabotage and reckless endangerment. His co-conspirators have been demoted. Your formal complaints have been retroactively validated. You have been cleared of assault charges under collective self-defense statutes. And my job? That is the complicated part. You could complete your contract with full honors and hazard compensation. Or you could transfer. Or you could accept a new position we are creating specifically because of this incident. What position? Deathworlder Relations Coordinator. You would work with Station Command to develop actual, functional protocols for integrating high-gravity species into station operations. Proper training. Real accountability. Making sure this never happens again. Raven considered this. And if I say no, then we will provide excellent references and you can work anywhere you want. But I am hoping you will say yes, because you were right. We have been treating Deathworlders as expendable, as tools. That needs to change. And I suspect you are the right person to change it. I want conditions, Raven said. Which are full authority to investigate harassment complaints, direct line to Station Command, and anyone who has a problem with Deathworlder personnel answers to me before their supervisor. I am done watching people get dismissed because they are not fragile enough to matter. Talvex's crystalline face somehow conveyed satisfaction. Agreed. Welcome to Command Staff, Coordinator Kowalski. Word spread. Not just through Zenith 9, but through the entire collective. The story of the human who had stopped holding back became legend. Other Deathworlders started speaking up, filing complaints that had previously been ignored, demanding treatment that matched their contributions. Station protocols were rewritten. Training was implemented. Command structures across the collective began addressing issues they had previously dismissed. Velcher returned to his homeworld in disgrace, his academic career destroyed, his family humiliated. The collective scientific community quietly revised several policies about research ethics. Raven settled into her new role with the grim satisfaction of someone who had fought for change and won, but wished it had not required fighting. She trained station personnel, investigated incidents, made sure soft species understood that Deathworlders were colleagues, not curiosities. The galaxy learned, slowly and painfully, what humans had always known. Civilization was not the absence of capability, it was the choice to restrain capability. And that choice could be revoked. 6 months after the incident, Zenith 9 hosted a collective-wide conference on interspecies integration. Raven gave the keynote speech, She titled it, "Why Poking the Predator is Bad Policy." It became required reading for station commanders across collective space. The Tarshan Collective continued ruling the galaxy through technology and bureaucracy. They maintained their sophisticated society, their advanced science, their beautiful art. They just did it while treating Deathworlders with the respect beings capable of extreme violence deserved when they chose not to be violent. Revolutionary concept, apparently. Raven Kowalski, daughter of Earth, survivor of a planet that had spent millions of years trying to kill her ancestors, worked her new position with the quiet competence that had always defined her. The difference was that now, people listened when she talked. And far away, Earth continued spinning. Still hostile. Still dangerous. Still producing humans who looked at impossible situations and decided to survive them anyway. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Restraint was not weakness. Patience was not inability. And the scariest thing in the universe was not the monster that wanted to hurt you. It was the professional who had decided she was done being patient. The Tarshan Collective had built their civilization on the assumption that advancement meant transcending physical limitations. Humans had built theirs on surviving physical limitations. Turned out both approaches were valid. Turned out neither was superior. Turned out assuming the quiet one was harmless, just because she was following your rules, was the kind of mistake you only made once. If you were lucky,